Now let's dive into our featured story of the day, shall we? I have a $1 million price prediction for you from crypto OG Brock Pierce, who unveils his reasonable price target for the King Crypto. He also gives us a target for this particular cycle. So let's break this one down. He was recently just interviewed on TV. So here we go. Early Bitcoin adopter Brock Pierce is revealing what he thinks is a reasonable price target for the King Crypto as we move into a new phase. He was recently interviewed on Fox Business. And also, as you know, he's the co-founder of Tether, USDT, and says that the recent explosion in Bitcoin fees as new applications are being built for its blockchain represents a bullish catalyst for the flagship crypto. Quoting him here, "It is what we have seen. Bitcoin had record fees during this halving because a lot of what we call layer 2 technologies, the idea of building on Bitcoin. If you have heard of Ethereum, it is all the other applications that have moved away from Bitcoin. But Bitcoin is back and delivering smart functionality, NFT functionality, meme technologies. All of these things are now being built on top of Bitcoin for the first time since almost a decade ago. And in anticipation of that, record fees as people are trying to get in to be the first on having all these new things that are being built on top of Bitcoin. Very exciting. I am happy with the price." Now, Pierce, the former actor, you remember him from the Mighty Ducks back in the day? I do. He says that $150,000 is a viable price target for the current bull market, but that $1 million per coin is more likely over the long term. So let me reiterate. He's saying for this particular cycle peak, we hit 150,000, but that 1 million is inevitably going to happen. Quoting him again, "I think it is likely we'll see north of $100,000 per coin. I think 150,000 is probably a reasonable target at some point this year, 2024 fam. And long term, it's 1 million per BTC or more. It's a binary outcome. Bitcoin either goes to zero, not really, or over $1 million unless something happens. So it is really binary in terms of what will happen over time. And so I am bullish." You can say that again. And to watch this actual interview he did on Fox Business, check the show notes below the video in the description. And let's discuss how realistic is this 150,000 target for this year, and how realistic is it that Bitcoin hits $1 million per coin? Because obviously it's not going to zero. And even Mike Saylor has said that if it's not going to zero, it's going to $1 million. And I absolutely think it's more probable for Bitcoin to go to even 100 million than to zero, in my humble opinion. But yeah, 150 G's, I mean, that's ultimately just over 2x the current price action and virtually 2x from the 74,000 all-time high we reached back in mid-March. So I can see that as a very probable scenario, potentially this year as well. I've been calling for 2024. I can see Bitcoin going from 100 to 120,000. So 150,000 is in that ballpark. I still feel we hit the cycle peak in 2025, which is the year preceding the halving, right? Which would be next year. And I think we could hit as high as 750,000. My bear scenario, I stand strong at 222,000. Nipsey giving us the next buy signal, buy the dip opportunity, the way he does that. Just FYI, shout out to the mascot Nip. But yeah, we could go as high as 750,000 in a bull scenario. I mean, 150 is easy peasy. However, I want to know your thoughts. And thinking of $1 million, you're just thinking out loud. I know it's on the table and it can happen this year. There's a possibility. If I was to throw some math on it, I'd say maybe 15% chance of it happening this year. I'm more of a believer that it's going to happen the following cycle, some year between 2028 and 2029, sometime between then. So for example, I think let's just take the modest, very low, just so we could, a believer of under promise, over deliver. So let's just say Bitcoin hypothetically hit my bear scenario for the cycle, which is, let's just say 250 for the sake of round even numbers instead of the 222. So let's hypothetically pretend we hit 250,000 in 2025. Then to hit $1 million, the following cycle is just a modest 4x. And if we hit 250 from the current price action, that's more than a 4x, obviously, right? It might be roughly 5x, maybe somewhere between 4 and 5x. But do you think Bitcoin will realistically 4 to 5x for the cycle? And can you see another 4 or 5x the following cycle? If you can, that's $1 million Bitcoin. And we also got to consider hyperinflation. I mean, the dollar is not getting any stronger. It's getting weaker and weaker by the day. We're like 35 trillion deficit here in the States. They're guaranteed to continue to print, as we pointed out earlier with Arthur Hayes and his conviction why Bitcoin is going to $1 million. So that has to play a factor as well. We have the institutional demand, which did not exist the previous cycle. It was driven purely from retail, and we hit 69,000 off of that. I am in the camp that we would have hit 100,000 previous cycle if we didn't have bad actors such as like FTX's Scam Bankman-Fried, who is now serving 25 years in prison for fraud, for defrauding investors, right? He was obviously an enemy of Bitcoin. There are many enemies of Bitcoin. Another example of an enemy of Bitcoin would be that large asset manager. What's the name? Not BlackRock. We know BlackRock is the largest, but Vanguard. Vanguard openly talks down upon Bitcoin, says they will not allow their investors to invest in it. They don't believe in its ethics. Imagine that. Bitcoin separating money from state. We don't believe in its ethics. Well, guess what? They're the largest shareholder of MicroStrategy. We know MicroStrategy back in 2020, first publicly traded company to put biddies on the balance sheet. Shout out Michael Saylor. We're often asked, is there a second best?
Which one's the best crypto asset? Well, Bitcoin's the best crypto asset. Okay, what's the second best? There is no second best.
And there is no second best. And there's a reason for that. But anyways, Vanguard is the largest shareholder of MicroStrategy. So they already have indirect exposure to Bitcoin because MicroStrategy has over 220,000 Bitcoin on the balance sheet. The second largest shareholder, BlackRock. And if you don't know, BlackRock is a shareholder in roughly 90% or more of all the S&P 500 companies in the world. That ultimately tells you they own virtually everything. They have their hand in everything. Vanguard is the second largest asset manager. I think Fidelity may be third. I know Fidelity is at 4.5 trillion. Can someone look up Vanguard? I know it's high, but I know definitely BlackRock's the largest of 10 trillion. So, I mean, considering all this, considering the nation state adoption, the sovereign wealth funds, the nation secretly purchasing Bitcoin behind the scenes right now, adoption in the Middle East, the BRICS movement, the move away from using the dollar, potential of Bitcoin becoming a world reserve currency, hyper Bitcoinization, all of these factors we have to consider over the next few years. So the question becomes, when 1 milli, I'm going to go out and say I can see Bitcoin realistically hitting $1 million by the year 2029, which would be the year preceding the following halving, which is scheduled to take place sometime in March of 2028. But let me know your thoughts. But I'm also open to the idea that Bitcoin can do it a lot sooner than anticipated. What if there is another bank run like we witnessed with the regional banking crisis last year, which took Bitcoin out from the gutter to back above $30,000, right? What if there are other unforeseen events and more war and more uncertainty in the markets? Where are all the billionaires? They say there's 2,500 plus billionaires on the planet. Where are they going to park their billions, right? When everything is untrustworthy. The only immutable perfect money in existence with a finite limited supply ends with the name coin and begins with the name bit, is all I'm saying. There is no alternative. There is no second best. And I think they're going to continue to stack all of these large hodlers, all of these whales. We know the majority of the Bitcoin supply is in the hands of the long-term hodlers. And if you're unwilling to sell, right, and there is mass demand in the market and very limited supply, you're going to witness what is called a supply shock. We've already witnessed a demand shock off the back of these ETFs, right? We just had a halving 5 days ago. So the issuance of Bitcoin is now only 450 per day, new being produced, whereas it was 900 every 4 years. We have again and have again until the year 2140, when there's no more Bitcoin left to be mined. Then we have to calculate the true scarcity of Bitcoin, considering all the lost Bitcoin, which we'll never see, right? We know there can only ever be 21 million, but how many millions are lost and gone forever? A lot, Laura. Just saying. So how many more Bitcoin will become lost? a lot more, which makes it that much more scarce and that much more valuable. So when you start to think on the grand scheme of things, the total addressable market of the world, all the wealth in the world is collectively over 900 trillion. They say real estate is 300 trillion. They say the gold market cap is roughly 15 trillion. Bitcoin is just a pup. It is just getting started. What's a 1.3 trillion market cap on the grand scheme of things? Nothing, right? So Bitcoin has potential, in my opinion, to do another 100x as far as market cap, right? 100 trillion, I can see it. I can see 100 million Bitcoin price, but it doesn't mean it's happening today. Bitcoin, I view as a long-term strategy, the greatest savings to ever exist. Meaning, not only is it a store of value, but Bitcoin being perfect money is the perfect savings. I view Bitcoin as a way to save, to not only preserve, but to increase your purchasing power. The dollar is mathematically guaranteed to continue to lose its purchasing power just on the fact it's guaranteed to continue to print the money because of the 35 trillion deficit. What you can buy in America, for example, with $1 is not the same as it was 10 years ago. It's not the same as it was 3 years ago, right? You can buy less and less. Real estate continues to go up. Oil continues to go up. Everything not denominated in the dollar, it just continues to go up. It's going to cost more and more dollars to buy the same thing, right? It's called the melting ice cube. Michael Saylor described it with that metaphor perfectly. Those who treat fiat as a store of value, what do we call those folks? I mean, the song displays brilliantly what we call those folks.
That use fiat currency, we call them poor.
Why is that? Because fiat is guaranteed to continue to lose purchasing power. But if you can just save in Bitcoin and treat Bitcoin as your savings account, that will eventually transform your life. I'm not going to say it's going to happen overnight, but if you can hodl for at least 2 cycles, a mere 8 years of your life, maybe your family and future generations will never be the same again, right? And that's regardless if Bitcoin was a couple of 100,000 in a few years or a couple of million or above and beyond our wildest expectations. The only form of currency that cannot be manipulated, controlled, and print more of and devalued is Bitcoin. So there is no second best, if you know what I'm saying. But anyways, let me know if you agree or disagree with some of these predictions. When do you think we'll likely to hit the $1 million target or even 150,000 as Brock Pierce is predicting by this year in 2024? Holla at your boy.